Good afternoon, Dragon Slayers. Those of you who have read the book Dragon Slaying, welcome. Those who have not, I encourage you to read it. It's kind of a template of the things we talk about here today. Todd, how have you been?
Doing well. Had a very interesting morning today.
What'd you do?
I visited with my best friend from childhood's parents that I haven't seen in about a decade.
God,
Yeah, it was interesting. I got to show him the deli and show him the studio and all that stuff. It was pretty cool.
did they greet you with how much you've grown? Or
Yeah, this way they're like, "Wow, you must be about 260 now." No, they didn't say that.
okay,
But yeah, good visit. I was a little nervous because they saw my parents yesterday, and I didn't know what we were going to be getting into regarding my mom's health and stuff like that. But yeah, they had a good visit with my mom and dad, and it seemed like my mom was doing good. And
your mom
yeah,
is doing better.
yeah, she's kind of yes, she's doing a lot better. It's what she's dealing with is osteoporosis and arthritis, and then kind of fighting herself when it comes to getting better and getting help and getting surgery and stuff like that. So we're very slowly but surely working on getting her comfortable with the idea of surgery right now.
Good son.
Yeah, trying. Good dad, good sons. Like we're all trying really hard.
Doing what you can do.
Right.
So today I wanted to talk about how one is responsible. I think it's very easy to, in this climate of serial victimization, to view oneself as a victim.
Right.
The advantage of that perception is that you might have others come forward to support you. The disadvantage is that your ability to control events may not be as great as if you could identify yourself as responsible for things. And I'm reminded of the catastrophic response to the brutal murder of George Floyd. George Floyd was an African-American man in Minneapolis. Derek Chauvin, who apparently shared with George Floyd a job as a security officer off hours, subdued him, pressed his knee on the back of his neck, suffocated him, and ultimately he and his compatriots were found guilty of various charges related to his death. A reaction to that was, of course, a swelling of outrage. The problem with that is that virtually everyone was targeted without regard to responsibility. And then the residue of that is that entire communities were burned, leaving the inhabitants of that community at a significant disadvantage. So if you listen to the watchwords of the movement, no justice, no peace, begin to wonder how many of us could come forward with that claim. How many Asians, how many Native Americans, Latinos, women, African Americans, Jews, and others. At various times in our evolution, we were all exploited. And at various times in our evolution, some of our ancestors were part of the exploitation.
Right.
But there seems to be little merit other than expressing one's rage in attempting to hold remote populations responsible for one's misery. I think a lot of what's going on in the Middle East right now is a consequence of that. So then the question becomes a way of embracing responsibility for oneself. And so the question I would have is that, what's your goal? What are your values? How do you wish to pursue your values? And what can you take responsibility for on a day-to-day basis? We're all attempting to discipline ourselves in various ways.
Right.
You are aware, I'm aware of how tempting various kinds of foods are. And what happens is the food industry exploits our craving for salt, for sweet, for fat to destroy our own lives.
Right.
And rather than doing that, we have to look at this and say, okay, I am going to be disciplined. I'm going to sacrifice the immediate pleasure of the moment for deferring to my health in the future. And what's difficult about that is every day you're doing that, you have to impose discipline on yourself until it becomes part of your identity.
Right. The great Master Ace said, "Sell us grease in a box in hopes that we die quicker."
Right.
Yeah, it's sad stuff.
Okay. So
I love grease in a box.
Well, it's difficult for most of us to turn down a good pizza.
Right.
Yeah.
Or a good burger or whatever, but
yeah. And plus, we've got the media bombarding us with all sorts of messages about how good this stuff will be.
Right.
For example, if you think about it, we're not going to be able to watch a football game tomorrow without being bombarded with ads of really attractive men and women, buffed, great looking, hoisting down chicken wings and beers.
Right.
And you wonder, okay, what is inconsistent about this picture?
Right. They're not 600 pounds.
Well, very unlikely are those same actors who are shooting that, hoisting down unlimited quantities of wings and beers.
Absolutely.
So we have to remember what our identity is, and can we identify with where we're going? Can we embrace the hope, the belief that we're going to be able to transform ourselves into what we wish to become? In the back of our mind, there's always that negative whispering. Who the heck are you kidding?
Right.
Come on, man. No possible way.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah, you're friggin' hopeless.
Right.
So you got to counteract that negative voice.
How?
Believing in yourself, becoming your best friend, saying to yourself, okay, brother, you can do this. You've been through it before.
What was the analogy you used? You basically have to become a responsible parent for yourself, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. The parent doesn't feed their kids crap.
Right.
Are you going to feed yourself crap? Well, my parent's not looking. Really?
Okay. Right. There you go. Yeah. How is your parent not looking if you're embodying the parent right now, right?
Right. And then you have to begin to believe yourself. And the other thing that you have to be aware of is that not everyone is on the same motivational path as you. So you go out with your buddies and everybody's downing wings and beer and pizza, and you're saying, you have a Caesar salad on the menu, and everybody glares at you.
Right. We're having pizza here, buddy. Yeah.
Right.
Well, Scott made a good point yesterday. We were going to go somewhere to eat, and he said that just about every restaurant has some sort of a quote unquote healthy option. You know, something that you can get that's not necessarily fried, not necessarily caked with salt. You don't have to get a soda, because I was like, if we're going to eat out, it's going to be terrible. And he was like, it doesn't have to be terrible if you eat out, which is true. But if I'm eating out, I kind of want to eat something tasty and terrible. I don't know.
Well, okay. But then you have to think of how much pleasure is that giving you for how long?
Right.
And how does that compare to projecting at yourself at 80 years old and some doc is cutting off your toe because you got diabetes?
Right. That sounds horrible.
Well, let's hope it doesn't happen.
Right. No, that won't happen.
Okay. All right. Good. So the other question I had of you is, we were talking about this a while back, I think last week, your success in running multiple enterprises.
Right.
How do you choose good people?
My brother is actually the one that I task with that. He is incredible at finding good help.
How does he do that?
We could ask him someday, but I think honestly what he does is he's just transparent. He's honest. He interviews, most interviews go for 5 or 10 minutes. Scott spends 30 minutes in an interview, and he tries to get a feel. He calls himself somewhat a good judge of character. Mm-hmm. So he can tell in a short amount of time if someone.
By the way, I'm honored that he still smiles at me.
Yeah, he's the glue basically that holds everything you see together, my brother.
Okay.
But yeah, it's Scott. It's just his talent with sniffing out fake people and finding good, motivated, hardworking people. He's batting, I don't want to say he's batting 1,000, but his batting average is pretty darn good.
Okay, so let's say I'm a 22-year-old young person,
right?
College student. and I'm applying for a job with you guys. What should I be presenting of myself?
Honesty, punctuality. One of Scott's the coolest things he asks people within the first 3 or 4 questions is, "What's your worst trait? What's your best trait?" And then he just extrapolates from there. But I always thought that was really interesting because I don't think I don't think he really wants to know what the person's worst trait is. He wants to see how they react to that question. "Oh, I'm not going to tell you my worst trait. Why would I do that?" Or people will be like, "Oh, I'm always late," or "I'm not great with communication," or the people that are just completely honest. I think with that question with him, I think that's what he's looking for with that question. It's kind of like him asking them to be here 15 minutes early to their shift. We don't need. I hope they're not listening, but we don't need them here 15 minutes early. He's teaching them a lesson for life. Scott is kind of taking on a more of a mentorship system than a boss system here.
So if I pass through the Beachhead Deli basic training,
right,
survive that, and was successful here, that's a platform for life success.
I don't know about all that, but we've definitely had some employees that have worked here over the 18 years that have become very successful humans. I don't know if it has anything to do with us or not, but we at least provided them with a good job when they were in college, which I think is saying something.
My worst trait is a penchant for chocolate-covered marshmallows, but I put that in the rearview mirror.
So yeah, I give Scott a lot of credit for how we find such good people. And I think his honesty and just the way he is as a person really, really reflects in that interview process. And then we go through it. They become a cashier. It's the first thing they do. You stand out front and you greet the customers, and you're the most important person. You're driving the bus right now. So what we need you to do is you need to learn the menu, and we need you to engage the customer. How was your day? What can I get for you? If they have any questions, if you can't answer them, you ask us. And so the first, what is it called? A rite of passage at Beachhead. Once you get through Scott's half-hour interview, the first rite of passage is to run the cash register and be the face of the deli.
But there's another element that I'd like to have listeners out there who are looking for work or any kind of job.
Right.
And that is, you look for cultures that will allow you to grow and bring out the best in you. That is, if I were interviewing with you as a younger person, I'd say, I want to learn. I want to learn about what you do, and I want to contribute to that culture. And I hope that I emerge on the other side a better person.
Right. And I think creating the culture was, I don't think that we started with that in mind, but we definitely have created a pretty cool thing here over the last almost 20 years. Just recently we had an employee come back, and she's probably in her mid 30s now, 3 kids, amazing husband. They both have great jobs and are just winning in life. And she still says thank you to us every time we see her. Thank you for the opportunity for working here. I just learned so much with you guys. It was just such a really safe space for me to become myself and things like that, because we've had bad jobs. When you have to go do something for any amount of time and you don't like it, it's terrible. So we create like you said, I guess culture would be the word, where these guys feel comfortable, where they can be themselves. And as a group, we can help these customers, because this sounds so cliche, but we have the best customers ever. They're understanding. They wait. We had people waiting 25 minutes today with a smile on their face.
Well, you groom your customers.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, if you don't got $20 for a turkey sandwich, you could go down the road anyway. It's not a cheap date at the Beachhead Deli, but definitely get what you pay for here. And I think customer service is included in that, honestly.
Well, just as an aside, I'm not really giving you a plug, but maybe I am. But I'd much prefer a Beachhead Deli turkey sandwich than to put up with all the grief associated with making a turkey for Thanksgiving.
Right? Or even going to the grocery store and buying the turkey and buying the bread. And
yeah, what do you do with the leftovers?
They go bad. I feed them to my dogs, and my dogs shouldn't eat that. So I swear my dog's diet is much more under control than my own.
Okay. So treat yourself as if you're a dog.
Right. Exactly. Not a parent, a dog parent, right?
Dog parent,
yeah.
But speaking of parent, that's the other thing I wanted to say to our audience out there. There are going to be opportunities out there for people to work in settings where the culture is positive and nurturing and advances your development. That may, for some of us, become a substitute for random parenting that we might have been exposed to.
Right.
So you have become, for some of the people that work for you, uh, an element of parenting.
The cool uncle.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Very good. Well, the other question I had is, as an aside, I think we take a lot of messages from our culture from music.
Right.
What's going on in music right now from your perspective?
Wow. A lot.
Okay.
Pop music is becoming more conscious, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's still just the vapid pop music out there, but I would say that there's a lot of quote unquote popular music that has a message these days. And I feel like that's a throwback to, the 60s and 70s when music that was popular actually had a good message to it. So we're getting back around to that.
Mm-hmm.
Hip hop is unstoppable force in the world.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I love it, it still baffles me on a daily basis how it's influenced culture and humanity.
What's the message?
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and despite what society says, you can win.
Okay. So the message is one of hope.
It's a voice for the voiceless.
And responsibility.
Yes.
Compassion.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in certain circumstances, sometimes it's just really raw and visceral, and sometimes it just bangs you over the head with a good, healthy mental message.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends. I was telling you the other day that I've kind of devolved into a more hardcore music that I listen to, and you said, "Have you ever heard of Jimi Hendrix?" So there it was, cyclical, right?
Right.
You got your Buffalo Springfield,
Mm-hmm.
and then that devolves into Jimmy. It's a distilled, pure crack cocaine version of Buffalo Springfield when you get down to Jimmy.
Right. So, but each generation could find that message.
Right. I think hip hop is very, very unique, kind of like jazz,
Mm-hmm.
very American art form, and born out of absolute just strife. Hip hop. There's no hip hop without the Bronx burning.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't happen. So those kids that had no music programs at school figured out how to use a turntable as an instrument.
Right.
They couldn't go to dance class because it didn't exist, so they learned how to break dance.
Mm-hmm.
The art teacher didn't want to have anything to do with them, so they found some spray paint and started painting on the walls and the subway trains and stuff. It's definitely one of the most beautiful things born out of a terrible thing. And I think jazz is similar.
Right. So there's going to be...
And the blues, right?
Yeah, but the voice of the people
right
comes through in music.
Right. And all very notably black art forms.
Mm-hmm.
Jazz, hip hop, the blues, definitely born out of African American culture for sure, which I just absolutely am so grateful that it exists in this world, that music exists.
When I was but a child in West Africa, this boy physician, there were a group of traveling minstrel musicians called griots, which consisted of a fairly primitive guitar, ukulele instrument, and drums. And these people would go around and they would celebrate individuals. The game was, though, that if you didn't pay them, the progression of their verses become increasingly more insulting.
Oh, wow.
But African music has preceded even American music, and there's a deep legacy of that.
And the griots were storytellers,
right?
And a lot of stories, quote unquote, didn't get perpetuated without them and their music.
Correct.
Which I think is incredible, and I think that once again is mimicked in the blues, in jazz music, and most recently in hip hop. It comes from somewhere. There's a place that's coming from. And I recently did an interview with a musician that I really respect, and he described hip hop as a voice for the voiceless. And I thought that was so beautiful to think about, people lifting themselves up with art.
But also you can resonate with it if you're listening to it. If you yourself feel somewhat powerless.
Right. And I think that even he made a really good point, because there's definitely a lane, a form of hip hop that's very much conscious, very much what I just said, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But then there's also a more biographical, edgier, street biography type of hip hop also, but he said that the popular music and the real music still perpetuate that voice for the voiceless theory. You know, they're still at the core, they both still have that, which I always thought was a beautiful thing, you know? And I, as a person who's been playing hip hop music on the radio for almost 25 years, I feel like I've probably changed some lives by perpetuating, you know, letting people hear different stuff.
Well, that's also an interesting part that you, as a white guy, appreciate the art form and are key to transmitting that message.
Right. And I just thank my dad for that, you know, putting the headphones on my head and let me hear Stevie Wonder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was music. Michael Jackson was music. That was what I was taught was music as a kid. And it really, really formed my opinion. And then of course the gangster rap came along into the suburbs, and that's all I wanted to listen to.
So I grew up in Motown. Same idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm growing up in Motown. That was probably pretty cool.
Well, one very quick story is I was in medical school at the time, and I took my date to a venue which was ironically also called the Apollo Theater in Detroit. And we had a jazz musician who essentially took a knee for the first performance, and people were booing. And the MC came out and said, please join me in welcoming a new group from Detroit, 3 wonderful girls. Let's give it up for the Supremes.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. And, you know,
At the real Apollo?
Yeah.
Like the Apollo where they boo you off stage, that Apollo?
Not New York.
Oh, okay.
In Detroit.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And, you know, so we're there and said, wow, you know, these are just kids. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's incredible. Were they good?
Incredible.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they got a standing up.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, those 3 made something of themselves, did they not?
Well, Motown had a future.
That's Berry Gordy, right?
Berry Gordy, yeah. Marvin Gaye, all those guys were. Who was the guy? Tracks of My Tears. Zachary Wilson. Is that right?
That sounds right. I don't have my Googles in front of me right now.
Yeah,
but
anyway, but yeah, some incredible
I can hear the song in my head right now, though.
Okay. Well, all right. So, Dragon Slayers, if you have some questions or comments, please feel free to write us. And I look forward to seeing you next week, buddy.
Right on. Little quickie tonight. I mean, you know.
Yeah, it's quick. Saturday for those of you who are picking this up at a different time.
Yeah. Like I told you earlier, I've had a very busy Saturday. So I'm relaxing right now. This is my relax mode.
Me too. I look forward to this.
Yeah, right on.
It's my therapy.
Right. Ironically, right?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Good day. So long.